Well, that's Simon McCorkindale having an impromptu game of bowling using a train car and a human pin. It's an exciting scene from an English spy thriller called The Riddle of the Sands. And it's just one of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing on this sneak previews. I'm Neil Gabler.
And I'm Jeffrey Lyons. In addition to The Riddle of the Sands, in which 2 adventurers try to save the British Empire, we'll review Entre Nous. That's a sensitive French drama about an enduring relationship between 2 women. And El Norte, about 2 Guatemalan immigrants who make a perilous journey north to Los Angeles to try to find a better life. Neil leads off now with his review of Angel, the movie about a Los Angeles high school student living a double life each night on the Sunset Strip.
Well, Angel isn't what I expected it to be, which isn't to say that what it is any good. But what I expected was a teenage sexploitation comedy about a girl who, as the ads say, is a high school honor student by day and a Hollywood hooker by night. What Angel actually is a kind of teenage looking for Mr. Goodbar. A mad slasher is on the loose in Los Angeles, and here Angel, the high school student and streetwalker, is brought in by the police for any information she might have about the murders.
You got a pimp?
You think I'm stupid?
Stupid? Why would I think that? Hell, you got everything going for you. You're young, attractive, healthy, and you're swimming around in a toilet bowl.
It's my life.
The hell it is. You think you're out there by yourself? I'm on that street too, damn it. Every time I see a kid like you turning the trick, I want to blow up the whole damn strip.
Leave me alone. You're not my father. You have no right to judge me. You don't even know anything about me.
How old are you? 15? 16? You know what happens to used-up whores? They don't go to Leisure World, baby. They end up on hard booze and spend half their time in the slammer. That's just where you're headed. You're living in a dream world, baby. What you need is a good, swift kick on the butt.
You think I'm proud of what I'm doing? I hate it. Bunch of fat old slobs drooling and slobbering all over me. I just get so disgusted with myself, I just think I want to throw up.
Then why do you do it?
I have my reasons. And believe me, I have no intention of doing this the rest of my life.
What do you think this is a game? You think you get away scot-free? Everything in life has a price on it, Angel. Whatever you do, you pay the price. Somewhere down the line, you're gonna have to pay.
Then I'll pay.
Actually, we're the ones that had to pay, unfortunately. While Angel's fellow hookers are being murdered and the police are tracking down the mad slasher, Angel is having troubles of her own. First, the kids at her high school discover that she's a prostitute. That's bad enough. But then her counselor discovers that Angel is on the streets because her father and mother both abandoned her. In this scene, she pours out her soul to the sympathetic police detective.
You know, I used to pretend that I was just like everybody else. Now they all know the truth. You know, I've had sex with hundreds of men, but,
I've never had anybody that loved me or held me. I mean, not anybody that I wanted to be with. I've never even had a boyfriend. You know, I wake up every morning and I think this is the last day I have to do this. Today, my dad's gonna come home.
You still believe that?
Yeah. Not anymore.
You know, Angel, sometimes a guy meets a woman and he sees a new life for himself. So he splits, cuts his ties with whatever he had. Time goes by and comes a point where he can't come back, no matter what. Not because he doesn't love you.
Then all I've done has been a waste, hasn't it?
Nothing's a waste, kid. Nothing.
I feel so ashamed.
Easy, kid.
You ought to be ashamed of her acting, I think. For what it is, Angel is competently made, but what it is isn't much. At worst, Angel is ugly and sadistic. At best, it's pointless and worthless, a kind of made-for-TV movie spiced up with a little sex, a little violence, and believe it or not, as you saw there, a little sentiment. Angel as a victim. About the only thing that could have redeemed it is if it were a good action picture. And it does have a brutal maniac for a villain, which is a start, but it doesn't have a real hero, a Clint Eastwood type to get us cheering, and without that, Angel isn't exciting or entertaining or anything except low budget.
I think you're being much too kind to this picture.
Too kind to this
I
thing?
think that scene shows an example. You can look like Sally Field and still be a graduate of the Pia Zadora Correspondence School of Acting. She is absolutely terrible in this picture. But on a more serious note, this picture does, I think, a dangerous thing. It almost sugarizes, so to speak, the idea that it's okay to walk the streets almost, because there are all these delightful characters that she meets. They never really show the sad, sleazy, terrible life that teenage prostitutes lead. We never understand how she manages this
Jeffrey,
dual
I'm
life.
not too worried about the negative influence this is going to have on America. In fact, the film does try to be serious and sensitive, but it isn't. And it tries to be an action picture, but it's not good enough at that. So it's a half-baked, sensitive movie. It's a half-baked action movie. It's half-baked all the way down the line.
It's afraid to take a stand. We never see her really turn a trick. She never sleeps. We never understand how she manages this life. And it's just the lines. There's a line here that's got to be in the all-time Hollywood line, the great lines of the movie. The line is, "Oh, I'm glad you're here because I was just on my way to the morgue." It's said as if they're reading it out of the phone book or something. It's so bad and so woodenly made, too, and woodenly acted. It's embarrassing, really. Unbelievable. Well, our next movie, you didn't like that either, right? Our next movie is a
This is not one of my favorites.
No. Our next movie is a French picture. It's called Entre Nous, and it's a tender story about a close, enduring relationship between two women. This movie is unique because it's about two women and it's written and directed by a woman. In Entre Nous, two women survive the horrors of World War II. 7 years pass, and each woman manages to get her new life in order. Now, in this scene, set in 1952, after a school play in which their children had performed, the two women meet for the very first time, and their friendship begins.
Je suis confuse. Je vous en prie, madame, c'est pas... Mais alors, il est parti. Mais c'est fou. Il aurait pu m'attendre, quand même. J'étais chez une voyante. Elle m'a tiré les cartes, ça n'en finissait plus. Remarquez, je n'y crois pas, mais j'adore. Vous y croyez, vous? Ah, je sais pas, j'ai jamais essayé. Il n'a pas voulu les mettre.
Oh, mon masque. Elle est ridicule avec ça.
Mais laisse-la, elle s'amuse. Mais Florence donne son masque à Sophie. Oh, elles sont insupportables. C'est vos filles? Oui. Oh, la petite, elle est tordante. Et pourquoi t'as pas voulu mettre tes plumes, toi?
Oh, tiens pas.
Mais enfin, je les ai faites pour toi. Est-ce que tu peux être ballot? Tu veux pas aller jouer avec les petites filles?
Non.
Mais va jouer avec elles.
Mais non, j'ai pas envie.
Il est timide. Je dois pas savoir m'y prendre. C'est tout mon contraire. Hein, mon rat? Zut, j'ai filé mon bas. Mais vous mettez rien, vous, sur les jambes? Il faisait pas très froid. J'ai mis de l'ombre solaire.
Well, it's a very important meeting there because the two women soon become fast friends, sharing their secrets, comparing the direction of their lives and marriages, and giving each other help through their problems, great and small. Their families have become friendly too. And in this scene, one of the women learns that her husband, who's named Michel, has been trying to get really friendly. He's been making secret phone calls to his wife's best friend.
J'ai pas osé vous en parler avant, ça me gênait. Mais ça dure depuis longtemps? Ben, ça fait un mois à peu près. La première fois, je lui ai raccroché au nez. Mais qu'est-ce qu'il vous dit? Rien, des bêtises. Qu'il veut me voir, qu'il a envie de me connaître. Il est fou. Ça, alors, j'en reviens pas. J'aurais jamais cru ça de Michel. Mais ça y est, il rappellera plus. Je lui ai dit que s'il insistait, j'allais vous en parler. Et qu'est-ce qu'il a dit? Rien. C'est fini. Il n'insistera plus. Bon, René, t'as fini?
Florence, je t'ai déjà dit, tu ne bois pas l'eau du robinet. Tu vas attraper la polio.
Mais je bois pas.
Je voulais vous demander, vous partez bien le week-end du 20 pour les vacances?
Oui?
Vous pourriez me prêter votre appartement? Je vais avoir de la visite.
De la famille?
Si on veut. Bon, René, ça suffit maintenant.
Ils sont enfermés. Je vais chercher papa.
Mais non, c'est pas la peine.
René, combien de fois il faut que je te répète que tu n'as pas besoin de t'enfermer dans les cabinets? Mais c'est fou!
Pousse la targette.
Oh, ce que tu peux être cornichon!
Ça se pousse ou ça se tourne?
René, calme-toi et regarde. Ça fait comme un petit papillon?
Le petit s'est enfermé.
Regardez où? René, pousse-toi!
T'as eu le temps de faire pipi au moins?
Well, as you can see from that scene, Entre Nous isn't about earth-shaking events, but I was often engrossed and elated. The little joys, hurts, and sorrows and triumphs these two women endure and share could happen to almost anyone, I suppose, which is precisely why I found their friendship so believable and effectively depicted. I was continually absorbed as I watched them trying desperately to escape their unhappy marriages, hold on to their children, and control their lives, instead of just making do or merely surviving. I even recalled some of the feelings I had watching Terms of Endearment. For in Entre Nous, too, the characters come alive. I cared about them very much in almost a personal sort of way. This plain, simple, restrained story about women who married to survive, then survived their marriages, is a very sensitive, intelligent movie.
It's a great idea for a movie to compare the difference between a female-female relationship and a male-female relationship. I think you're right. It creates a tremendous sense of intimacy between the two women on the screen and between the audience and those two women.
I think it's important to say again that it was directed and written by a woman, and you never lose that woman's perspective, which is why the reason why the movie worked.
Which is also one of the problems I think I had with the movie, because I think the men, particularly in the second half of the film, are treated so unsympathetically. They're either clods or insensitive or ineffectual, and the woman's relationship, you call it, you know, believable, incredible, but in the second half of the film, it is almost pathological. It's not your typical female-female relationship. At least I don't think it is.
It is overstated towards the end, you're right, and it's part of the problems when you have that perspective. But nevertheless, I was identifying with the women, which is something I'm almost never able to do in a picture.
I did for about half the movie, and then in the second half, I began to lose it. Well, our next film is El Norte, or The North in English. It's an American drama made completely outside the Hollywood system by some very talented filmmakers. El Norte is about two Guatemalan Indians, a brother and a sister, who flee Guatemala, head north on a dangerous journey through Mexico, and then sneak across the border into the Promised Land, the United States. But once the brother and sister arrive here, they realize that life in America isn't as easy as they thought it would be. For one thing, there are immigration officers. In this scene, after narrowly escaping a raid to round up illegal aliens, the sister, the younger woman here, gets a few pointers from a more experienced friend in a cafe.
No, mijita, yo siempre checo un trabajo bien antes de conseguir una chamba. Si el trabajo no tiene una salida rápido, pues ni modo que se jode el trabajo. Siéntate, ándale. Yo te invito, ¿ok? Hola, mi plomita. Échame 2 burritos de chile verde, ¿sí? Y me da 2 cafés.
Nacha, ¿tú sabes dónde están los gringos? Mira la calle nomás, igualita que el México que le dicen.
Ay, Dios, si tú no crees que los gringos van a querer vivir con los mexicanos, ¿verdad? No, sí, ellos viven allá en sus colonias. Oye, he estado yo pensando. Yo creo que yo voy a regresar a limpiar casas. Es más seguro y con los contactantes que tengo. Oye, a lo mejor nos cae suerte y nos toca una de esas casonas de los gringos. ¿Qué tal entras? ¿Hacemos un 2?
Sí.
Órale, juega. Bueno, pero primero tienes que aprender a hablar inglés.
Sí, pues, como que quiero aprender inglés.
Y como que yo sé dónde. En las escuelas públicas. Ahí es gratis.
El gobierno. ¿Y no será peligroso?
No, hombre, es lo más seguro. Allí nunca preguntan nada.
¿Y cómo?
Ay, mija. Si tú tratas de comprender a los gringos, te va a dar un dolorzazo de cabeza. Es que están tapados. Oye, pero tú pareces india. Bueno, o sea, decir, una cambiadita de ropita no te haría mal, ¿eh? ¿Y que tú no has conocido la Sears? ¿No?
It's the first thing you have to learn about America is Sears Roebuck, I guess. Well, while Rosita and her friend clean suburban houses, her brother, named Enrique, gets a job as a busboy in a fancy restaurant. And pretty soon he's learning English and winning a promotion to assistant waiter. But their troubles aren't over. Here, immigration officers pay a visit to the restaurant where Enrique works. And at the same time, in another part of town, Rosita is suddenly ill with typhoid.
Thank you.
Jorge, la amiga.
There's a real sense of terror that runs throughout this movie,
yes,
the terror of being caught.
Yep.
Well, independent films like El Norte are usually crudely made, amateurishly acted, under-dramatized, and full of self-righteous nobility. Well, El Norte isn't any of that. It's beautifully made, well-acted, highly dramatic, and not very sanctimonious at all. Even if the idea of two innocent immigrants in America is already a surefire tearjerker, and even if the movie relies on cliches and contrivances for its drama, it does have two very appealing actors, and it has a real sense of place, from the Guatemalan villages to the Los Angeles shantytowns. And together, the actors and the realism get you involved. Now, I don't think El Norte is the most sophisticated movie you're likely to see, but in its sincerity and in its sympathy, it may be the grapes of wrath of the 1980s.
I agree entirely. I think it's pretty close to poetry on screen there. The story of Rosita and Enrique is seen entirely through their eyes, and you can sense the feeling of desperation and hope, and also of lost dreams. In one sequence, he has $20 on him, and to him that's a fortune, and to somebody else it's nothing, and my heart was in my mouth when I
It's
saw
that sense of identification. Early in the film, Enrique's father says to him, you know, the rich people only think that we're a pair of hands, but what I want to show is that we have heart and soul, and that's exactly what this film accomplishes. I don't know that any of us really think that these peasants don't have heart and soul, but the film at least makes them come alive, makes these people real.
And noble, too. There's a sense of nobility going all through this picture. I mean, it's long, and you don't get the feeling that it's long. You get involved in their story from the beginning, and it just sweeps you up all the way through. It's totally original.
It's that nobility that I think the movie doesn't have, Jeffrey, and that's one of the reasons I like it. I don't think this movie's sanctimonious at all.
No, not that way. Not that way. Noble in the characters. These are great people in their own way.
We care about these people because they're not self-righteous throughout the picture.
I think it's one of the best films of the year. We shall see. Well, our next movie is The Riddle of the Sands, and despite its title, it's not about camels trekking across some vast Arabian desert somewhere seeking an oasis or a drink of water. No, the sands in its title are on the coastline of a string of islands off Germany. A dashing young English yachtsman has been sailing there aboard his sloop in 1901, and he discovers a mysterious buildup of German troops on a remote island. Now, the Germans claim it's just a salvage operation, but he's still suspicious, so he summons his old college chum, played by Michael York, to help him figure out just what's going on.
Germany's growing stronger every single day, and very soon her navy will rival ours.
So, we must look for something more tangible. What about Dolman and his salvage works? Well, that little story is an obvious blind.
No, it's the one thing that's true. I looked it up the other day. Which is the Corinne. A French frigate that went down off Mehmet in 1811.
On the gold?
Well, she was bound from Hamburg to Havre, carrying bullion to Napoleon.
You don't suppose that's what all this is about?
What?
A treasure hunt.
She's back.
Who's back?
Cormoran.
The idiot's going to ram us.
You'll never get out of it, right? Well, eventually, the two Englishmen discover that all these mysterious comings and goings of the German naval officers, sailors, and government officials are part of a daring plot by Germany to invade England's unprotected northern coast, and that one of the leaders of this sinister plot is a one-time English naval officer, now masquerading as a German. And here, below decks, York confronts the traitor, while York's partner steals aboard ship to protect him.
You must agree it's a very daring strategy. Simple but effective. 100,000 German troops towed across the North Sea in barges and landing on the flats of the Wash on the undefended east coast of England with the whole Grand Fleet in support and a total element of surprise. Perfect. The British fleet will not be able to move in those shallow waters. Of course, success depends on maintaining absolute secrecy. Now, what do you suggest, Mr. Carruthers, is the best way of keeping a secret? Don't share it with anybody. Now, I take it you're not alone in this.
Oh, hardly. My letter will be arriving at the Admiralty at any moment now with complete details.
Oh, there's still time.
I doubt whether he'll think so. The Kaiser's out there at this very moment with your colleagues and a barge full of soldiers, grounded on a sandbank. The Kaiser's rehearsal, and you weren't invited. Well, they quite simply didn't trust you. A grand invasion of England, wrecked. And by one of your own countrymen. Survive, if you can.
Crothers!
It's the most exciting scene in the movie.
The only exciting scene in the movie, I would say.
The Riddle of the Sands is picturesque and somewhat adventuresome, but the payoff, that dastardly scheme to invade England, comes much too late to make it really thrilling for an adult audience. And for me, at least, the complex intrigue before World War I is largely irrelevant. And you also need, I think, a working knowledge of English coastal geography to really feel that the Empire is really in any serious danger. The Riddle of the Sands was adapted from a novel written for young English schoolboys, just learning perhaps to keep their upper lips stiff in crises. So this Hardy Boys Goes to Sea type story will, I think, entertain them at least. It is breezy and easygoing, if not terribly exciting. Basically harmless kid stuff.
I don't think it's going to entertain them. After they've seen Return of the Jedi, this dull movie, there ought to be a snooze alarm over the screen that we can press as we watch this thing.
But I do want there to be some room for a little film like this to entertain kids of that age that doesn't have laser beams and rocket ships, so in that sense I can recommend it.
But the movie has to be exciting. This film has dull characters, a dull plot. You don't even know really what's going on until the last 15 minutes of the movie, so there's no sense of danger, no threat. It's an absolutely boring film.
I think the end of the film is the best part of it, put it that way.
Yes, the sign that says the end. That's the best part of the movie.
I set you up for that one. That's not fair.
Well, now let's summarize how we felt about the films we reviewed this week. We both thought that Angel, about a high school student who's a hooker at night, is a pointless, worthless exploitation picture, so too knows. We also agree on Entre Nous, the French film about two female friends. Jeffrey thought it was absorbing and sensitive, and I liked its intimacy, but found it one-sided, so one strong yes and one mild yes. And we agree again on El Norte, about two Guatemalans who emigrate to America. It is extremely well made, but above all, it's sympathetic and sincere. And finally, we disagree on Riddle of the Sands. Jeffrey thought it was a passable adventure picture for kids, while I was just plain bored. So 1 yes, 1 no.
That's all for this week. Next time, our special show on women directors. So until then, save us the aisle seats.